Hello, this is Darrell Castle with today's Castle Report. This is Friday, the 30th day of August in the year of our Lord 2024. I will be talking about a letter written to the House Judiciary Committee in which Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg admitted to Congress and the American people that under pressure from the Biden-Harris administration, he censored them. He admitted to a censorship campaign that targeted content related to COVID and Hunter Biden's laptop during the 2020 election. Yes, folks, in addition to donating hundreds of millions of dollars to the Biden-Harris campaign, Zuckerberg admitted to depriving Americans of real information and feeding them false information that was designed to affect their health, possibly fatally. That wasn't enough for Zuckerberg and Biden. They also had to cheat, lie, and steal an election, all the while telling us that Trump is Hitler and a threat to democracy. If you don't lie down while we steal this election through subterfuge, we will tell the rest of America that being a MAGA Republican is akin to being a Nazi in a government the size of America. The typical voter is hopelessly torn to bits by the flood of information that is constantly fed to him and her. Who is to know what is worthwhile, what is not? So one is just blown along by the winds of relentless propaganda fed to him by his own government through its various ministries of propaganda, like Zuckerberg and Facebook. The voter hasn't met any of these people. He doesn't even know anyone like them. He normally doesn't associate with power-obsessed people, but nevertheless, they're out there looking to deceive him in order to gain and keep power at any cost. The elite media seek to wash the voters' minds collectively and individually clean each day. They control the government. They tell him they have a higher moral purpose that involves a better use of his money than he could ever make. They have to save the planet from climate change, from all those evil Russians. They have to stimulate the economy so their fake numbers will be even more fake. They must feed all those poor and sick people. Their fake charms are just ways to distribute more and more of the fruits of the labor of hardworking Americans to powerful insiders. The higher purpose is nothing but an illusion and a swindle. So Mr. Zuckerberg formally admitted to Congress that he allowed himself and his company to be a part of this swindle of the American people. Facebook, he said, implemented a vast digital censorship regime on behalf of the federal government to suppress the speech of American citizens. Freedom of speech, or the protected right of Americans to say what they think and want to say, whether it offends or not, is the most basic of freedoms. Without it, no American is free, whether he is a MAGA Republican or a totally sold-out Joe Biden, Kamala Harris Democrat. Zuckerberg's letter admitted and outlined how Facebook colluded with officials from the federal government, including White House representatives, to silence content contradicting the established consensus regarding COVID and Hunter Biden's laptop. Here's a quote from Mark Zuckerberg. Quote, in 2021, senior officials from the Biden administration, including the White House, repeatedly pressured our teams for months to censor certain COVID-19 content, including humor and satire, and expressed a lot of frustration with our teams when we didn't agree. Ultimately, it was our decision whether or not to take content down, and we own our decisions, including COVID-19 related changes we made to our enforcement in the wake of this pressure, end quote. He went on to express regret at his company's accommodation of the government's, quote, requests, perhaps a lot of somebodies should have to respond in damages for what they did, if not also in jail time. They deserve jail much more than the J6 political prisoners sitting in jail because of an evil false flag event conducted by an evil government led by evil people. This is probably happening right now, will continue because the government is staffed by devoted ideological leftists who believe passionately that they are so morally superior their end justifies any means. Zuckerberg's regret doesn't resolve the issue, not by a long shot. It really means that he was feeling the heat from Congress and he needed to get ahead of the game. Joe Biden is a lame duck now, already well under the bus. He was removed by Democrat elites so that Harris could pretend to be washed clean of his dirt as if she had nothing to do with it. She might possibly just be low enough on the IQ scale to not know, but the same elites who ran the country when Biden was pretending to be president are running it now, and will run it if she is elected, then pretends to be president. The various social media platforms are now so closely associated with the government that they are virtually one and the same. Free speech conducted and denied on these platforms affects your health, i.e., denial of helpful information about COVID and the vaccines, as well as wealth, safety, general happiness, enjoyment of life. It seems very wrong to me to allow the federal government to legally provide false information to us about vital events. But the case of Murphy versus Missouri seems to allow it. In that case, the Supreme Court ruled that states and individuals who challenge the Biden administration's censorship programs don't have standing to sue because they cannot establish a clear link between the government's pressure and the platform's actions. So, in light of that case, in light of this Zuckerberg letter, what will Congress and the state attorney generals do now that the link is clearly established and admitted? In addition to providing us with government lies about COVID, Facebook spiked the Hunter Biden laptop story, thus affecting the election, or said differently, allowing or assisting the theft of a U.S. presidential election. Everyone, including the Democrat Stasi, otherwise known as the FBI, now admits that the laptop was real and, if known, could have affected the election outcome. The laptop revealed a lot more than the obvious story that Hunter Biden is a drug-addicted sexual pervert. It revealed Hunter's traveling the world from communist China to Ukraine to Romania to act as a broker in the selling of the political influence of his father, the big guy. So Zuckerberg and Facebook contributed to Joe Biden's cover-up and theft of the presidency. The fact that this is now a better late than never situation does not detract from the impact of Zuck's letter. Americans can now look at it and say, oh my God, Zuck, you lied to us. You deceived us. You let us think that Biden was good. Trump was literally Hitler. He admitted that he was, quote, wrong to suppress information about Hunter's laptop and that he regrets doing so. Well, that's nice, isn't it, folks? That's nice. Because his regrets are so meaningful almost 4 years after the stolen election. I wonder if Zuck regrets helping Democrats flood the country with illegals, thus allowing unprecedented violent crime in our cities, including rape and murder of many women and little girls. Does he regret assisting Biden with taking us to the brink of nuclear war in two parts of the world while working very hard to foment war in another over in the Pacific? What about the radicalization of our K through 12 children to the point that parents are shut out from their education, from their lives, not listened to, even prosecuted? I don't give Zuck a pass on anything because he said he regrets giving in to certain demands. Not to all demands, mind you, just certain ones. I suppose he picks and chooses his regrets. Donald Trump had something to say about Zuck's letter. Quote, Zuckerberg admits that the White House pushed to suppress the Hunter Biden laptop story and much more. In other words, the 2020 presidential election was rigged, end quote. Yes, Donald, it was rigged. But in light of this admission, if we had a real Republican Party, a real Speaker of the House with the courage to do the right thing, perhaps something could be done, but oh well. Why would it take so much courage for the Speaker of the House or any other public figure to do the right thing and bring forth the charges that this admission deserves? If you take positions in public that have not been approved by the consensus that makes up the powers that be, no one will come forward to debate you. No one will come to your aid. Instead, you will be referred to as a kook, a nut, etc. The most admirable politicians of our era have been treated that way. Ron Paul was called all those names, much, much more, often by people in his own party, by people unworthy of him. Influential people told Americans that Ron was a nut, so they repeated it as if they believed it. Ron tried to tell the American people that the Federal Reserve was robbing them. He tried to tell them that the military-industrial complex was doing the same thing with the Federal Reserve's help. People wouldn't listen to him. They shunned him as a nut. But those of us on the outside listen. The young listen. They help bring him forward. But once again, the establishment wasn't having any of it. The Republican nomination in many states was denied to him in what amounted to unfair tactics to deny him votes. It wasn't as blatantly obvious as what the Democrats have done with Kamala Harris, but cheating nevertheless. So here we are, 2 months from the presidential election, and the Democrats have selected their chosen candidate for us. Miss Harris got 0 votes, has so far given 0 press conferences, 0 interviews, but she and Tim Walz did stage buying a bag of Doritos in a convenience store, all, I suppose, to make them look normal. The people who selected her have inflicted a ridiculous anti-democratic joke on the American people. In reality, she is nothing but a bubble-headed actress with the right skin color for today's Democrats, the right hair, the right smile. It's all choreographed without a single original thought. It is especially distressing when you consider how far American elections have degraded. We are at the point now where candidates who stand in opposition to those selected for us are charged with non-crimes, indicted and convicted of basically nothing. If that isn't enough, they're shot at, wounded, then the alleged lone nut shooter is cremated before evidence can be processed, just like in the removal to China of World Trade Center evidence and debris. We are supposed to look at it and just say, well, folks, that's politics. Just move along. Nothing to see here. Nothing having to do with the federal government can be believed or trusted anymore. The Department of Justice, covering the FBI, which is supposed to be investigating itself in the Trump near assassination, should get a long look, as should the government within a government, the CIA. But who has the courage to do such things, to look at them? Excuse me, folks. I'm sure by now that you are aware that Robert Kennedy Jr. has dropped out of the presidential race and endorsed Donald Trump. Tulsi Gabbard, still on the terrorist watch list, also endorsed him. I read an article in the Babylon Bee, which, if you don't know, is a humor paper, which said that Trump wanted Kennedy in the campaign because he would draw most of the sniper fire away from Trump. Funny. That's funny, but a little bit sobering. Tulsi said, quote, "We are closer to the brink of nuclear war than we have ever been before. This is one of the reasons I am committed to doing all that I can to send Trump back to the White House, where he can once again serve as our commander-in-chief," end quote. Well, folks, finally, folks, I close this Castle Report once again with the words of the great H.L. Mencken, quote, "Every normal man must be tempted at times to spit on his hands, hoist the black flag, and begin slitting throats." At least that's the way I see it. Until next time, folks, this is Darrell Castle. Thanks for listening.